Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this video. The very early subscribers of this channel may recall this Ernst vertical steam engine that you're about to see. It, has been in my possession for pretty much 7-8 years now, and it's always been a runner until recently the crank web gave up the ghost. Basically the thread inside had worn beyond recognition. And after that fell off, I decided to take the entire machine apart and gave it a major mechanical overhaul. So I started up by soldering the old thread shut and re-drilling and re-tapping that. But upon closer inspection, I also noticed that the thread on the main shaft had stripped. So I made a new one for that as well. And while I was at it, I decided to address the issue of clunking that this machine made all the time. Well, of course, it's over 100 years old, so there is some play inevitably. So I made some new bronze bushings for the crankshaft. You can see the ones here. I later shortened them up quite a bit because I noticed they were just too long and created too much friction for the tiny machine. The problem with the crankshaft was that the original one was cast into the flywheel, and I decided, well, that's no problem, I'm just going to drill that out. But I noticed, unfortunately, the shaft, of course, was harder than the material of the flywheel. I assume it was some kind of tin, and the drill wandered off and removed the stubby end of the thing, which basically serves as a pulley for power takeoff. And unfortunately, shamefully, I didn't show it with the camera, but that eventually bugged me so hard that I just had to have another go at it, because this stubby end, however tiny it may look, it really does make an optical impression when you look at the engine from that side. So what I did was remachine the flywheel, bore the entire thing out on the lathe, and then I made an aluminium plug for it with the contour of the old stub, and drilled it shaft size and Loctited the shaft and the plug into the flywheel, and also took the opportunity to repaint the flywheel. The flywheel originally was some kind of cherry red, and the paint was in a rather bad state, so I decided to repaint it, and all I had at the time was a bright red, and that doesn't really fit this machine. I wasn't really pleased with that, so now I went the extra mile and put the proper color on there. And here you can see it running in on my polishing spindle, just to give the bearings the clearances they needed. And off camera I also had the crank web and some other parts nickel plated. And what you also don't see here is that I made a new crank pin and a new wrist pin for the machine, because they had also worn out, as well as put some shims into the crank assembly just to reduce side play a bit. And it does still clunk a little bit when it's hot, but it's a lot more quiet and it runs a lot happier than it was before. So here we go, we should be steamed up now and ready to see it running. For those of you that are interested, the plug here is from aluminium, not only because it machines so nicely and profile turns nice, but it also has a very similar expansion coefficient to tin. So the plug here doesn't expand at too much a different rate than the tin, and therefore I hope that the press fit is going to last and not just wear out in no time. As you can hear, the knocking is still there. Try and fix that but it's a lot quieter now than it was before. Bit of oil in the right places. I don't know if you prefer, you know, an all silent video or me talking over it. Of course, the running noise of the machine is quite nice as well, so I'm going to shut up for a while. You may notice there's a bit of wobble on the flywheel. I didn't bother chucking it up in the four-jaw because what tends to happen in the four-jaw is as you're trying to get it running completely true, you're tightening more of the jaws, and with this soft tin alloy I didn't want to risk damaging it any further than I had already before. So it's running out by, I think, 3/4 tenths, and that's okay for me. After all, to repeat, this is a 105-year-old machine. Now the drain cock is not 100% leak proof, but sure it is a lot better than before. You can see there's a tiny droplet hanging out there, and before that it was just gushing out water. Well, not gushing out water, but definitely spitting, and you'd lose more water through the drain cock than actually through the running of the engine. The filling plug here is also nickel plated. It was brass before. It's not the original one. The original one went missing before I got it. Notice I'm only oiling the top. That's because the oil will eventually run down into the crank members as well. So there you have it. Running gear completely overhauled with literally no changes. But I have to admit now I've got a clean conscience about this whole deal. I've given it everything I could. Most practical improvement was fixing the rivet on this drain cock. It just, I had my tray here ready to put under it, but all the mess in here now is from the leakage of the steam piston, and it's all an oily mess. But, for a model steamer, that's good. So yeah, thanks a lot for watching. Hope you enjoyed as much as I did. And bye-bye. But I have to say, now I've got a clean conscience.